WWF WrestleMania the arcade game was something new for wrestling video game fans. It combined the visuals and style of Mortal Kombat and tried to provide something a little less traditional than what players were used to from a wrestling video game experience. It reviewed well and was fairly well received for the most part. Its follow-up, however, didn't achieve the same successes. There may have been a few reasons for that. At first glance, WWF In Your House, released on the Sony PlayStation, Sega Saturn, and PC, looks similar to its WrestleMania counterpart. The digitized visuals and gameplay are there, though not as good as its predecessor. The graphics seem a little more pixelated and murky, for lack of a better term. The over-the-top gameplay returns, and once again, the game portrays more of a fighting style than a traditional wrestling experience. One of the biggest differences is notable, however. Gone are the lights in the backdrop of wrestling in a sporting arena or Madison Square Garden, and in its place, nightclubs, dungeons, crypts, and so on. The backgrounds and venues are meant to reflect each wrestler in the game. The roster includes 10 playable superstars, including the returning Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, and The Undertaker from WrestleMania the arcade game. The game also boasts some new faces, including Owen Hart, the British Bulldog, Vader, Ahmed Johnson, Goldust, Hunter Hearst Helmsley, and the Ultimate Warrior. The roster is reflective of the WWF's new generation, showcasing most of the top talent of WrestleMania 12 in the spring of 1996. Vince McMahon returns for play-by-play commentary and is joined by one of the greatest intercontinental champions in the company's history, Mr. Perfect, Curt Hennig, who wasn't an in-ring competitor at the time. The game is based off what was a new pay-per-view event for the WWF. In Your House was a neat concept at its inception, as the very first event was highlighted with the World Wrestling Federation actually giving away a brand new house during the show, which subsequently was won by an 11-year-old. But back to the game. There isn't much to be said about In Your House, the video game. Like I said, it's like WrestleMania the arcade game, but a watered-down version of that game. It's relatively the same or worse in every sense. I mentioned earlier there may have been reasons for the game's lackluster performance. The game was once again published by Acclaim, who, at this point, had been a major partner for WWF video game releases since the original WrestleMania on the NES. Around this time, though, Acclaim was not in a good way. They'd gotten themselves into some trouble with the Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC, and were experiencing some cash flow issues and financial losses. It's been suggested that maybe Acclaim didn't put as much effort into In Your House due to some of these issues, but also because they were putting all of their eggs into the basket of Turok, soon to be released on the Nintendo 64. Whether that's true or not is hard to say, but In Your House definitely feels like a phoned-in experience, as there's no real upgrade over the game that came before it. It didn't get much press either. Sega Saturn magazine never even bothered to review it for their publication. GamePro did, but didn't have too many good things to say about it. Aside from being more of the same, In Your House is criticized for how quick some matches take to finish. That is to say, it's over before you know it. There's not much difference between the two console platforms. The Saturn seems to outplay the PlayStation, as the graphics and audio are cleaner on Sega's system. However, that's not a ringing endorsement either, as the bar is set pretty low. I will say the sound bites after the match are somewhat entertaining. Vader and the Warrior have some gems, and the rest are good for a chuckle too.
No pain. I'm strictly business.
One reason you may want to play the PS version over the Saturn is that you can go into the options and run sound tests of all the aforementioned audio samples. Listening to Ahmed Johnson spout off is a real treat.
Get ready for a beatdown. Bring it on. Let's do it. Hey!
All in all, it's another one of those maybe try it just to experience it for yourself games, but there's not a ton of incentive to play In Your House. You're better off sticking to WrestleMania the arcade game if you're looking for this type of experience. As the WWF looked ahead to its next venture in the video game world and was in the midst of embracing its Attitude Era, wrestling video games were about to take a major turn in how they were presented to gamers. We'll have more on that in the next video.